the Winter Soldier, or whatever the other part was called.
Welcome, everybody, to the Film Board. That's Tom.
Hello, it's me, Tom. Hi, everybody. Oh, really?
And we also have Steve Sarmento. Hi, Steve.
Hello, good evening.
And Andy Nelson.
Hi.
We have science to talk about. This is the Film Board. We've got the what is now the regular gang of thugs, and we are here to talk about Thor, the Dark World.
After all this time, now you come to visit me, brother. Why? To mock.
I need your help. But I wish I could trust you.
If you did, you'd be the fool I always took you for.
What's gonna happen?
I gave you my word. I would return for you.
You face an enemy, known only to a few.
Known only to one.
You must be truly desperate to come to me for help.
If we do nothing, they will destroy us.
You even think about betraying him.
And I'll kill you. That was from New York.
I like her. Your family.
Your world will be extinguished.
We're running out of time.
The very fabric of reality can be torn apart.
I'll find a way to save us all.
So we're looking at Thor, the Dark World, everybody. Let's go around. Tell me what you think of the movie. Steve, you go first. You never go first.
I never go first. Okay, I will go first.
You go first.
I will say, I guess initial impressions are mixed, because I felt like the Thor films in the whole Marvel universe sort of served the purpose of, let's introduce some things that are going to play a bigger role in the Marvel universe. And really, that's about the only function the Thor movies serve. It's got some high points, it's entertaining, but I'd say it just doesn't hold up as strong as some of the other, superhero standalone or individual films in the Marvel universe that have come out, in the past couple of years.
I'm a little surprised to hear you say that. I thought you were going to be the one that was totally bullish on this film.
I always try to predict where you're going to be, and I go the exact opposite.
Andy, what did you think of Thor?
I agree with Steve for the most part. I enjoyed watching it. It was a very visual and big experience. It didn't really leave me with anything other than, little clues of what to expect in the future films. In the whole Avengers saga. But I do like the character Thor. I have my own little Thor script that I wrote. And so I like what they do with him. I think that they do a pretty good job with the character of Thor. But I still always find him a little dull because it's kind of the Superman complex, which is why I find the Superman films so dull. It's a person who really doesn't have any vulnerabilities, and it just gets kind of boring watching somebody in that position. This one, I thought at least I liked that we weren't on Earth as much, and I felt like there was a little less of that because he was fighting, for the most part, people who were kind of more on par with his level. But I still, it was a fun watch, but it didn't knock my socks off or anything.
Okay, Andy.
Yep.
No, that was you, Tom.
Andy, Tom. Everything that you just stated.
Andy,
Tom,
that's
right.
I get bored just talking about the film, Mike.
For me, Tommy, it was, as I've said ad nauseum, and I apologize to keep repeating things. I'm not a big superhero guy. I'm not a big fantasy guy. And so my expectations for my enjoyment for this film were sky high. What's the opposite? Ground low. And when within the first 30 seconds, the term dark elves is used. And I was just like, oh, no, dark elves. This is not for me. And that being said, I actually thought it was a lot of fun, filled with too much talking and exposition and a little bit of nonsense and boring things when I sort of went away in my head and rewatched Gravity in my mind. But then there was really a lot of fun stuff in it. And because my expectations were so low, I was kind of a fan.
Fancy that.
Right? That's a real twist.
Totally didn't see that coming.
It.
I know.
Wow.
Like make a fantasy film about baseball.
We
and I'm like, I'm all in. Yeah, no, it's weird. I really had a good time.
That is weird. I think I'm very much with Andy on Thor in particular. I don't think I've ever really had a very deep connection with Thor. I've read, I've done the comics of Thor, and I actually like Superman a lot more than Andy does. I'm a big fan of the Superman, but Thor for some reason is just weird. It's always been weird. This whole crossover between the Thor Odin, look, I'm a Viking kind of a thing, and Earth has never seemed wholly appropriate, and it always seems the weak link to me in the Avengers, and I've never really found who would think of this, and who would think of it as becoming really popular seems really strange to me. Yeah. So somehow it got popular. Now I because I already pretty much know what I'm going to get with Chris Hemsworth, and to a lesser extent Natalie Portman, I found myself really watching Tom Hiddleston,
yes,
and who I really liked Tom Hiddleston. I wished, in fact, they would have done more with him. I thought there were some really interesting little hints at depth in this film that I got very excited about, and they didn't really capitalize on them. And Christopher Eccleston as Malekith, you put Doctor Who on screen, and I think that's fascinating. I like this guy a lot. I've liked him in just about everything else he has done, so I was excited to see him. I thought he was woefully underused in terms of the breadth of his bad guy role. It was kind of blah. So
his character was so underwritten. That was my biggest problem with the film.
I've heard that there were some more scenes with that character that I guess got cut. I guess because due to runtime, I don't know. So I'm hoping on DVD that we may be able to see some of those pieces to maybe redeem part of that story and that character that was just really underdeveloped in this film. And I was hoping for so much more out of that character, because we've seen, Pete, I agree. I was really excited with what they did with Loki in this film. Mm-hmm. Going from the villain sort of in, Avengers and even the first Thor film, but to really transition him into that traditional Loki role of sort of the, selfish ambition, and I'm always going to play this to get what I want. And it's really that where we see him playing, sort of both sides of this. And I keep thinking somebody needs to sit this guy down with a copy of Macbeth and see, this selfish ambition isn't going to end up so well for you, but it's so much fun to see him constantly scheme to say, okay, how can I use this to my advantage? How can I use that to my advantage? And that was, really for me, the strength of the film. And these, Tom, as you said, these dark elves, I didn't know what they wanted. Yeah, they wanted to make everything dark, but
they're just mean.
Yeah, they are just mean. They're spite for spite's sake.
Right.
Does anyone know if is there an actual dark elf thread in the Thor comics at all, or is this something that was completely invented for the movie?
That's so funny.
Because I'm curious.
I thought at one point you were going to ask, are there really dark elves?
Are there really dark elves out there? Because I tell you guys, this really scares me. I'm nervous about this convergence coming up.
Because I remember when I had this conversation about Skeksis. Those things are wicked scary.
But that is a good question. Is this a real, because it's so underdeveloped and it's like back when we used to make movies like superhero movies or something, when just villains were just villains. and didn't have this cool backstory or anything. Is there a dark elf?
Just like, was there something more in the comics that somebody who read them would go, oh, well, he's doing this because of blah, 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 and they have all the answers. I just felt like it was an interesting world that they created, like the whole beginning with you see all the 9 realms, and I thought it was interesting that Anaheim was one of them. But
I didn't catch that. That's awesome.
Was it Anaheim or was it Vanaheim?
It's Vanaheim,
but
I like to think that Disney really is. Like, so that's why they're there. It's their own realm.
Awesome.
But I liked that whole vibe. It really had when it started, I kind of got excited. It felt like it was going to do this mythological Lord of the Rings thing with all of these realms, and it was going to really draw me in. And I just felt like you guys have already said, it just, where did that story go? I felt like completely left behind once we ended up jumping back to Earth, and we had to endure all of the Earthlings dealing with trying to figure out their science so they could, figure out why their little machines are doing whatever, and little kids are picking up cars, and things are disappearing and reappearing, which all was really interesting. I liked that quite a bit, but I really felt like the mythology and the reasons for the dark elves all got left on the wayside in the process of trying to tie all this back together with, let's cram it into Jane so that we can find a way to get her into this story more, is really what that whole thing felt like.
Right.
Yes, right.
Like, why did she get sucked to this random place where this red, the red, ether gets sucked into her? I mean, it didn't seem like there was any logical reason ever introduced that she was the one that was the person who got sucked to this thing. It just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, so to answer your question, Malekith the Accursed and the Dark Elves appeared in the 80s, in the early 80s in Thor, in the Thor comics, and so yes, they did. They were actually they came about in contrast to the Bright Elves, but not to be confused with the Light Elves. So there are Bright Elves, Dark Elves, and Light Elves. In that,
I'm so turned on right now.
Right. And Malekith was the ruler of these elves. So the storyline exists, and
but with your knowledge of that, I
don't have knowledge of that. No, there's a long storyline. What I don't know, and I don't know well, is the goo. What was the goo?
The ether.
The ether. Right. I'm not sure where that, if that was part of just the cinematic universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I can't find any reference to broader use of ether in the comics.
And that's just that's the Tesseract, or the what's it called?
Well,
Transformers cube. Like, we're very cool
that would be
about
Energon.
I'm less turned on. But just,
believe me too.
That we're so cool with just using such obvious MacGuffins for these kind of films now. I don't. Has it always been that way, or there's just always a thing that is too strong and can't be harnessed and all this kind of stuff, and then the whole movie is just a bunch of sort of moving pieces around this little thing that is barely understood and barely explained?
Well, yeah. I mean, in these movies, right? I mean, am I crazy in saying yes that's a true? I'm thinking through.
Well, I think that's the nature of superhero movies.
There's always going to be the something.
The kryptonite, there's always some element that kind of ties into their superpowers, I think. And, I think that's just something that you kind of say that's a given in superhero movies. Obviously, it's not quite the same in the Thor movie. It's not like it gave him his powers or anything, but it is this thing that's in this realm of theirs that obviously becomes kind of a key part in their mythology.
Right. Okay. The Allspark. What's the Allspark?
The Allspark. Right. That's
the same thing that the Energon.
Transformers.
That's what I was trying. Okay.
That's the Energon.
That's
cube
the god of Energon.
I guess. I guess in the superhero movies that I like, there isn't something like that. Like Batman, Iron Man, stuff like that. There's no just sort of mythological, but there's no reason to go into that. I'm sorry. I just wanted to bring that up. This was just
Tom,
another.
in the Thor films, I mean, that because he comes from this other realm, it gives us that gateway to bring in these sort of, extraterrestrial threats and forces into the world, the universe of the Avengers, because they're limited to their knowledge of what's here on Earth. So, Tony Stark may be the most brilliant scientist, on the planet, but so to give him something to fight against, we've got to bring in something that's beyond his experience, or the the Avengers as a force together. If there's nothing really on Earth that can stand in their way, we've got to bring that from outside. And I see Thor as that character that allows that access point into the universe for these sort of mystical or supernatural or very advanced science forces or elements like this ether, to bring that into this comic book universe and give them something to really contend with. And I think that's sort of, again, what I really see these Thor films, that role that they play, is to bring those outside things into, so that the Avengers have something to battle against.
That's bigger than themselves. That makes sense. That actually makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Well, does it make sense enough to excuse some of the issues in the I don't know. I guess I want to go back to the underwriting of the film. Because there's, as I think through it, like, there's nothing in this film that I found in terms of the, accepting the superhero tropes, right? There's nothing in this film that I found was just offensive and terrible. I thought it was good. I had fun at this film, right? Generally, I had fun with the spectacle of it. I had fun, kind of watching the science unfold all around me. I really enjoyed watching Tom Hiddleston and Stellan Skarsgård. I'm running around naked in Stonehenge. I thought was hysterical. I thought he did a great job.
I like this Thor. The Dark World, I liked it a lot better than the first Thor film.
Really?
Which,
yes.
In my opinion, was Captain America and Thor. Their first films were both sort of on equal footing, as they were okay.
No, stop. Captain America was awesome. Stop it.
But this one, I really think, because we've particularly with Stellan Skarsgård's character, his own character, he's had this arc of experience that you've seen these other films, you've got all this invested in. We don't have to spend a lot of time to know, okay, who is this guy? What does he bring to the story? It's already there, so we can capitalize on that. And I thought that they did a great job of really leveraging all the prior knowledge we have of these characters and what their strengths are and their backgrounds, and really moving that forward without having to spend a lot of time, okay, if you haven't seen the other films, here's who these people are. We sort of jump into it. And I think maybe that's why I was disappointed with, as we're saying, sort of the lack of development in some of the other characters, or, the Dark Elves specifically. But everything else, I mean, I really, really enjoyed. I mean, there's a lot of playfulness, a lot of fun to it. We got a much larger sense of these other realms. We start off in Anaheim and these other realms, and it's like, okay, here's this much larger universe.
Now it's become a thing. Just now,
and we're visiting all of them. And it felt like a larger story than the first Thor film did, and there was a lot going on. I think there was a lot more for the character of Thor to do. He became a much more active character in this one, where he's actually, he's doing something different. He's got to come up with a plan. He can't just take his hammer and bash his way through everything. He's got to come up with a plan to deal with some of these challenges he's faced. And that was something different that they did with him. That I appreciated. It was something that I wasn't expecting to see out of this film.
I would agree with that. I think that sort of goes with me having some fun at this film, as opposed to the first one, which I didn't get as much, certainly not as much repeat enjoyment out of this, out of the first film. It just didn't age well. It just sort of told the story, and I kind of move on with it. But this one, there was enough going on in this. I think what saddens me about the film is that I feel like there is this sense of grit that I wanted to see and wanted to be surprised, particularly in Loki the Trickster, right? When you get a sense of it when Thor goes up to the cell and says, "Enough tricks, Loki," and he sort of wipes away, and turns out he's like in a pile of his own vomit, and it's like just really, he's really in dire straits, right? You get a sense of a little bit of taste of grit in his character that I really wanted to see more of. This character is normally put together and yet lets his guard down in a way that I think is really compelling with his brother, that they supposedly hate each other, and yet that relationship starts to redeem itself. I wanted more of that texture. I wanted more of that that I don't think we got. It's interesting. I wonder how much of this, when you look at because this film was written by, let's see, Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, who were not involved in the first Thor,
and Christopher Yost,
Yost, but they were involved in Captain America, both Captain America movies. They wrote both Captain America movies, and Andy's surprise hit of 2013, Pain and Gain.
That's right.
So what is it that there's a different taste to this film as opposed to the first Thor? Who wrote the first Thor?
First Thor was Ashley Miller, Zach Stentz, and Don Payne. And then Don Payne did come back and initially write some of the story for this one, I think, right away. But he had been involved in the Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer movie.
Mm-hmm. And My Super Ex-Girlfriend.
And My Super Ex-Girlfriend, yeah. So, yeah, not...
the film. Mine.
Not Pete Wright's personal experience.
Right. But
what I found is my first reaction to this when I walked out and sort of had a chance to play everything back was, I thought, wow, did this film start off as a recycled Mission Impossible script? Because so many of the plot devices were, oh, this person's this person. Oh no, they're not. And there were not as many surprises in my when if we're going to get into spoiler territory now.
I've gotten a little bit close with the idea of Loki getting one. Pete, are you usually?
You're saying that's on me then.
No, I'm just wondering.
No. Spoil away.
I ask you.
Yep. No, it's the time. 'Tis the time. Do it.
Okay, so when Thor has his at the end is talking to Odin, and we of course see that it's not him. When I saw it, there were a few gasps of surprise when my wife and the older daughter saw it. They said there were a lot of people that were surprised. I thought, how? We've established this a number of times throughout. We know that's one of Loki's primary things. I thought it was put to good use earlier on with Jane, but I was really disappointed with the whole Thor sort of leveraging that as part of his deception. It just felt like, okay, what can we do here? Oh, well, here's this gimmick we're going to use several times throughout the film of something that we think we see, but it's not really what it is, and that sort of disappointed me because it just felt like every time they got to had written themselves to a point of we'll just bring this gimmick in because we know Loki has this ability. We'll just use it to get our way out of it, as opposed to other, I guess, I don't know, unique or creative or unexpected ways that would have maybe surprised me. And so I was a little disappointed with that aspect of the story.
Really, everyone in your theater, there were a lot of gasps?
They were surprised. I thought, what? Yeah.
That was the longest reveal in history.
Yeah.
Well, that reminds me of last time we talked about Gravity.
Yeah.
And they were like, what?
These are
George
the same
Clooney
people who
didn't just open up a space capsule and come in for a chat? Yeah.
Yeah, she just covered her face with a paper bag.
Right.
Everything's fine.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I was actually a big fan of most of the until the last one because it went on too long. I liked the I guess I have more tolerance for that kind of fakery than I do for Mission Impossible 2, because there's something just so gross about everyone taking off these incredibly formed masks off of their head and being like, ta-da, it's me the whole time. The fact that it's actually a supernatural ability is kind of more interesting to me.
Yeah, I think it. I wouldn't say that it was a surprise to me, although I was like, well, it was interesting that they played it where they played it pretty well, I think, pretty solidly, that he died, and so I liked that he came back in that little, it's just Loki. It worked so well for the character, and
it does, yeah.
I guess it didn't bother me that they brought it back so many times. It's just one of those things that I like, that they seem to be really, like you were saying earlier, Steve, they really seem to be developing that side of Loki where it's this trickster. And I have a feeling that as we continue seeing more of the Avenger films and all that, whenever there's an opportunity to bring Loki in and have him doing these things, that they will certainly jump on that. Because I mean, why wouldn't you? I had a person in full Loki regalia in the theater with me. It's that sort of character that draws people to it. It is an audience favorite, and I mean, Loki. The crowd just ate up every scene that Loki was in, and it was great to see. So I think that's why it doesn't bother people so much when you see that sort of stuff, that trickery, because it's fun. It in a movie like this that is just so over the top, glossy comic book, it's just one of those little fun things that you can throw in, and so I had a good time with it.
Was there anybody in Thor regalia?
What was that?
Was there anyone in Thor regalia?
There was nobody in Thor regalia. Loki is the one that everybody loves.
Was there anyone in Jane paraphernalia?
Well, I was wearing my Jane outfit, yes.
Like your distractingly red boots during the big... Right. Am I the only person that found that so annoying?
I totally got that. Actually, she's running through rubble in giant red boots.
In giant red boots. It was so annoying. I don't know why I found it so annoying. But I did want to say one thing to just to sort of compliment what you guys were saying. And I forgot it. Go ahead. What was it?
That was great.
I don't know. All I'm going to say is I had much more fun watching Kat Dennings as Darcy than I did watching Jane. I thought she's always goofy and delightful, and I loved her relationship with Intern. I thought that little comic bit was really fun.
I think they would have really made it work really well for me if they had pulled a Nick and Nora, and they actually cast him from Nick and Nora. What's his name? To be the Intern. I thought he would have been great.
That's awesome. Michael Cera.
Thank you. Her character really just struck me as the fun character to make the kiddies laugh sort of character. And I get I think
you're calling me a kitty.
I am calling you a kitty. Watching movies, the superhero movies like this, make me appreciate The Dark Knight and those sorts of superheroes much more, because I gravitate to the ones that have a little more gravitas to them, and all of that silliness, I could certainly do without. So
it's starting. We're getting to the point.
You're
just old and sad, man.
You gotta be able to have fun. I mean, you have to embrace your inner 12-year-old.
That's right.
And just have fun, and that's what this movie is. And I did, but there's story issues that I have where I just see potential to do things. Whether it's relying on like the same gimmick or, and I want to talk about some of the things going on in the end of the film, but, we can talk about that later. But no, that whole, none of that sort of light comic relief piece bothered me at all. It was fun. It set a fun, light tone for the movie. And I think that's something all the Marvel universe always has, is that lighter tone as opposed to DC, which always seems a little bit more shrouded in the darkness.
Mm-hmm. I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it. Yeah, I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it. I do enjoy it. It doesn't bother me when I'm watching it. But what it does do is it makes me notice that much more that, gosh, if they just cut those out, we could have had a much more interesting story going on with these dark elves. Because I feel like they're cutting stuff out in order to keep that stuff, which I end up, in the end, finding unnecessary, and I'm really grasping for trying to find a stronger story. That's why it bothers me. In retrospect, as I think about it, I'm like, I didn't need those scenes with Kat Dennings and the Intern. I really would have liked more with the Dark Elves, so I could figure out what the heck they were trying to do with this convergence.
That I will give you. If it's about trade-offs, I'll give you that. But I'm with Steve on his inner 12-year-old. I would embrace that kid all day long.
I'm halfway with Andy in the way that I still think that the lightness and the humor could be smart and did come from Chris Hemsworth, did come so much from, I'm sorry, Tom Middleston?
Hiddleston.
Tom Hiddleston. You guys don't know his middle name, and all this kind of stuff. There's a really
I think
fun,
it's William.
there's a really fun, smart humor to the movie. For me, though, then there was Kat Dennings, and I seem to maybe be against Pete and Steve with this. I found her so irritating. I felt it was so forced. That it was like there were other times when it was like, oh, this is fun, and we're like taking, when like Thor has to take the subway, like that's fun and that makes it light. We're putting a god into just normal everyday stuff, and then Kat Dennings shows up at the dinner with the date, and she's just like, I'm the comic relief. Like, couldn't have been more clear of like, now everyone should put their brains to sleep. Don't worry about science. I'm gonna steal your bread and make a bunch of dumb things. It was just so too much.
I think that was that character in the first Thor film. No, in the first Thor film, I think that's that role that character played. In this one, she had a lot more story function to bring information to Jane, to pull things together. I really saw that. Yes, there's light comic moments, but I really saw that they sought out to have more of a function in terms of story and conveying information or pulling characters together in this film, as opposed to the first Thor film, where she just was obnoxious and just sort of there, and I didn't really see as serving a purpose. They didn't know what to do with that character, whereas here there seemed to be more for her to do that was useful to story.
Well, and they needed to build a team. If they're going to go down this road where they have, they're using Dr. Skarsgård, Eric. They're using Eric's, his, wave nails that you put into the earth. Then they need enough people around there to deliver those nails. And so I get that they needed to have, they need to have Intern carry the toaster, and they need to, but I'm with Steve. I think they actually made her character more interesting in this film, certainly than they did in the first one, where she was much more of a doorknob character. And I thought she was funny. But, Andy and I are just coming off of Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, where, she was somebody I think that we both liked in that film.
So good in that movie. She was so great.
She was. And she was... It was hard, not to see her as anything different. I don't watch Two Broke Girls. I don't know what her character is like on there, but it seems very much like she's got this range in these films where she's playing this character. I mean, as far as I know, her day job in Nick and Nora was as an assistant to science.
Right. She feels like this is her character that she will forever play.
Yes.
I guess what would have helped me is, in addition to the snarkiness that is definitely a part of her thing, is also some sort of competence.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel that there was. That's what makes a comic foil, like in a bad way for me, of just sort of like, no, I'm stumbling along and I don't know what things are, and I use the word like all the time. Versus actually, like, why would she have been hired by a scientist? I don't know if I'm going on too long about
Kat Dennings. The word like all the time.
Yeah, but just like she just sort of seemed like a snarky teenager that got hired to do this job that is literally saving the world. Yeah. I would like a little bit of that, like even in At Risk of Jumping, like in National Treasure, those movies, the kid, I don't know his name, I apologize, but the male kid who's kind of a snarky, sarcastic teenager, he has really a good role to play. He's smart, and he adds to things, and every once in a while he's like, oh, I know that the dollar bill is actually the eye of God. I don't remember that movie that well, but the point being that, like, he has something to add, not just is there in charge of putting weird sticks in the ground.
Right. That was Justin Bartha.
Justin Bartha. Oh, right.
And he's also in The Hangover. Yeah.
In The Hangover. Yeah. Yes. I just saw him in the theater in why would I talk about that? Cool. So
I haven't seen that play.
That's the Sunshine Boys. It's playing in Los Angeles, everybody. All right. But I guess that's what maybe I wanted, was she was just snark
Yeah.
Instead of just actually giving something to do. That's it. All right, done.
All right. So Tom got the last word on her.
Yeah. If you guys want to read the novel I'm writing about Kat Dennings in this performance, go to Amazon. All right.
What do we think of Alan Taylor? Can we do a little roundtable on Alan Taylor? And I will tell you, who is that?
Director.
The director.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Welcome.
He's important.
He's an important guy. So Alan Taylor, I was really looking forward to the Alan Taylor kind of touch, if only because, and he has directed a number of series, particularly Sopranos, Sex and the City, Homicide: Life on the Streets. But I likely 6 of my very favorite Game of Thrones episodes across season 1 and season 2, and it was Game of Thrones that made me most excited to see this film. And I not that I was hoping for Game of Thrones, in Thor, but I was certainly hoping for more of that grit. And that I think is, what I felt was many much more safe choices than they are enabled to make on HBO. And I'm still on the fence with Taylor. I'm going to admit it. I don't know what I think about Alan Taylor's direction.
It felt, and I don't know if I can fairly just put it to him and the writers, but this one felt, the thing I did like about the first Thor film is it felt somehow ended up feeling more mythological. It felt a little more, grounded in the mythology. And I think Kenneth Branagh was probably the right guy to bring a story like Thor, because, his tie to Shakespeare, it just kind of seemed like he could find a way to make that Norse mythology interesting, at least to me. This one felt like they were trying to get it, but it all felt like this veneer on the top of really what was just kind of this big, Disney, Marvel, Avengers story that was really just designed to get from point A to point B in their lineup of things. And it kind of struck me like Snow White and the Huntsman did, which was another film that, I brought up Lord of the Rings earlier. It had that Lord of the Rings feel, but it never felt like it had the deeper mythology that that Lord of the Rings actually does. Snow White and the Huntsman never got that. This one didn't. Interestingly, it had a lot more of going on with the Nine Realms and all that, but I didn't feel like he found a way to bring the mythology in a way that made it work for me. It all just felt very superficial.
That I think, Andy, is what I'm sort of getting at here. The problem is that it's that superficiality of it that makes it. And what I was looking so forward to was not the tie to, necessarily to more superhero-dom or more. But the tie to alt fantasy that we've seen so much in Game of Thrones. That's the kind of environmental grit I'm looking for. And spending these times all the time in the Nine Realms, I found the mythology of this film ultimately so superficial that it was forgettable. As I was prepping for the movie, I couldn't remember, I just saw this a day before yesterday. I could not remember what the point of the Nine Realms was right off the top of my head. I had to go actually read the synopsis to remember what this movie was about.
Right.
The convergence, right?
It's wouldn't have been able to tell you that without reading.
Yeah, it very much kind of drops it after that opening, and it's happening. But I'm like, I don't know what is going to happen when these 9 circles in the sky line up. It didn't really give me much of a sense of anything other than like monsters are going to start dropping through these little gateways and end up flipping buses or whatever. It didn't make any sense to me.
Well, that's one of the problems I really have with the end is they spend the beginning, Thor is, he's traveled to all these different realms to sort of bring things back into order. And then, we're going to have this convergence. And I thought, okay, other than the fact that we have this, big, sort of dinosaur-like dog come bounding through, we don't really have any interaction with those other 9 realms. Thor's been there. He's been to these places. He knows the people there. He's got access to all these resources there to help him. Why aren't the 9 realms converging together to fight the Dark Elves since they're, have something to lose too. And the story started off large and then just got so small where it was like, well, Earth is the only one responsible for really fighting off the elves. Because for whatever reason, we didn't, I would have loved to have seen Thor, use those, the gravity spikes opening portals. They used it to send things away.
Right. And that
it was great. We could take Thor's hammer away, which is, okay, great. What's he going to do? But they weren't, the Dark Elves weren't pulling stuff, and nobody pulled anything else in from these other realms to really make this, a truly, universe expanding, conflict at the end. It was just, we're going to fight in London for a little bit, and we're going to be within like a 2-block radius.
And don't you get the feeling, though, you guys, that this is becoming the fundamental problem of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? And you could tell they were trying to deal with some of the cognitive dissonance that occurs now that they're merging all of these franchises. But when Jane looks at him and says, "You were in New York and you didn't even call," right? That's a real problem. When you have these realms open up, and we've already seen what happens when a realm opens up over New York and armies come flowing down into the city, and now you're going to open 9 realms and nothing's going to happen but a dinosaur dog hopping through accidentally. Like that is cognitive dissonance that we can't, it's very difficult to make sense of this collusion of universes that we're supposed to somehow just let go of. And I as I was watching the trailer of the Winter Soldier, which I am extremely bullish about. I'm very excited about the next Captain America. That same thing keeps coming back in my mind. What are they going to do with what happens when superheroes are not on screen, yet they've already proven that they can be on screen together at an instant?
Well, I think they handled that, they tackled that in Iron Man 3. And I think they did a sound job of handling how Tony Stark and Iron Man deals with the aftermath of that. And from, I saw Thor in 3D, so I got to see the 5-minute Captain America sort of extended, a scene and trailer piece. And from the scope of that, it looks like, we've got all of S.H.I.E.L.D. and we've got, again, sort of a larger scale.
That's much more sophisticated sort of military story.
Yeah. Yeah, something along those lines that I too I'm very excited about that story. It's something that's interesting, and I think to me it's we've got we see some of those returning characters with Shield, so we've got that sense of how Captain America, what his role is going to be in after the Battle of New York. But yeah, with Thor, I kept trying to where did it. It didn't really connect other than just, Jane. Yeah, Jane was the key piece. She slaps Loki and she, yells at Thor for you didn't call. But other than that, there's no real consequence to that. I guess maybe that's the challenge of a character like Thor, who's really not, connected to Earth. He's got all these other large scale issues to be contending with. So this isn't really. And I guess they addressed that a little bit in the beginning of, he's supposed to be there. On Asgard taking care of things, but he's always off, watching Jane or whatever. And so he's got to get himself rooted back to what his priorities should be.
Well, and I think they ended up with that. I think they ended the story nicely on that front. But if you're, I think by going back to the trope of all these different universes aligning, which we've already seen how that works, and then not letting that logic play out in the same way, that was a weakness for me in the big action sequence that just didn't feel whole.
Right.
Get it?
Nice.
Thanks. Yeah.
But for me, that big final action sequence in London was pure joy for me, most of it.
Oh yeah, every kid for Christmas is going to want one of those remote control things that lets you move, gravity holes through the neighborhood with just, the little, radio controlled car controller. Those would be great to be for Christmas.
Yeah.
And I did love when she found the keys.
Yeah, that was nice.
That was
nice. Nice touch.
I just, when they were falling through the different worlds, and I know that it was really it became about the battle between 2 realms and not just one after hearing you guys talk. But the film just absolutely came to life for me. And I thought it was so much fun. And with buses and cars crashing into whatever horrible other realm that was, where apparently they just make dirt. And then all of that stuff, it was just so I just loved it. That's the kind of thing, because I hate big boss battles. One of the big reasons that I have trouble with superhero movies is I hate big boss battles. And that one involved enough extra imagination to me that just made it so much fun. I think I said in the notes that I was literally like bouncing up and down on my seat. Like, I was just so happy. I just thought it was really smart and really clever.
It was fun. I mean, it was a lot of fun. And you take it at face value. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But then you look at all these other things. And it's like, gosh, they could have done a lot more with it. So it leaves me torn. It's like, I did enjoy it, but at the same time, I know what they could have done with it. And so I when I think about it in retrospect, I'm like, gosh, yeah, it was fun, but I wish that there was a little more going on there.
Absolutely, and that makes perfect sense. And that's why I wonder if I'm an interesting addition, not knowing anything about Marvel, not knowing anything about superheroes and that kind of stuff. That I can say, like, what really turned me on.
Absolutely.
Was like, things would happen, and then Thor would be charismatic, and that'd be great, and then the film would go to sleep for a while, and then Tom Hiddleston would show up, and the film would come back to life, and then would go back to bed. It's just like, for someone that isn't counting on the mythology, and someone who loves mythology, again, that's why I was so disappointed with the bad guys. But that ending sequence, that ending battle was just phenomenal in my mind. So much fun.
Where do we stand? Are you guys watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
No.
I watched the first episode.
I heard it's had like a 40% drop off in viewership since the first episode aired.
Well, and I've been watching it, and I think it's getting better. The first episode I thought was good. It had that whole Joss Whedon kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
And then it kind of went down a little bit. But what's interesting to me is that and I can't remember this ever happening before, but because of this Marvel Cinematic Universe, it sounds like the episode to air this week or this coming week, maybe it's the 12th. Is supposedly set in the aftermath of Thor, Dark World, right?
That's smart.
Yeah,
of this
latest Thor. Yeah, so they're doing an immediate tie-in to the television show, between the television show and this film. That's my understanding of it. Now, I'll report back, but it just seems like a really interesting tie-in, and I'm fascinated by that. I wonder which it will help. If it'll help the film, or not that it appears to need any, but if it'll help the show.
Did the film do well?
Yeah,
I know we don't usually talk about that kind of stuff, but did Thor: The Dark Soldier do well?
Yeah, just information as of today, it's made almost 87 million domestically, and foreign it's already at about 241 million. So worldwide it's already made about 327 million. Production budget was 170 million. So I don't know what they spend on prints and advertising, but they're definitely, it's definitely doing well.
Marvel is printing money. Wow.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
I'm excited for the one that Edgar Wright is directing.
That's Ant-Man, right?
Ant-Man, when they get around to it. Yeah. That'll be fun.
And then I also don't know if you saw the big Netflix news.
Yes, talk about that.
I just
huge.
sort of skimmed over, but apparently, they're Marvel has cut a deal with Netflix for, I believe, and I don't recall if it's movies or if it's series based on 4 other characters, and I know that one of them is Daredevil. I'm not as much into all the comics and all of that, so I know Daredevil, and that attempted a film that they tried, but they're bringing that back, and then 3 other characters, and their names elude me at this point, but it sounds like a big deal for Netflix in terms of their original content, and again, just Marvel sort of continuing to sort of dominate the mediascape there. So they've got TV, they've got theatrical release, and now they're going to be in the original streaming content as well. So
Yeah,
strike while the iron's hot, and they are.
That is,
Yes, they are.
I think, going to be fascinating. I think that was the idea. It would go from, let's see, Netflix committed to a minimum of 4 13-episode series, culminating in Marvel's The Defenders miniseries event that reimagines a dream team of self-sacrificing heroic characters.
Yeah.
And it includes Daredevil and Luke Cage and Jessica Jones and Iron Fist. This is interesting, and I've been thinking about this for a long time, and this has been mostly from DC, the perspective of DC, just as a big Batman fan. Is that I think what the Disney Marvel engagement has enabled is some back catalog stories around this sort of I imagine the Indiana Jones size warehouse of comic book character treatments, right? And they just haven't been able to figure out how to execute. And this Disney, ABC, Netflix, Marvel, all of the different sort of concatenations of studios is enabling us to see some material that we otherwise maybe never would have seen outside of these classic shrink wrapped comics. And I think it's
they
great.
were always fighting against each other.
Because why would you make a $150 million film about Jessica Jones, right? I mean, it's one of the sort of bench strength characters from the Marvel universe that who knows what Jessica Jones does. But this whole idea that we now get to see flesh out some new characters gives life to this back catalog that I think is really great.
It'll be nice to see them.
You guys don't even care, because all you're saying is, please, let me have more Iron Man movies. Come on.
No, we're saying we want Spider-Man to get back into the Marvel universe with the Avengers is what we really want to see. But that's just a pipe dream, I think, at this point.
Daddy would like that. That's true.
Also, what I'm saying is, who's Jessica Jones? No one's going to answer my question.
She's the one who wrote the diary.
What?
That was a really bad joke, I guess.
I don't get
it. I think it was a Bridget Jones joke. I think it was a Bridget Jones joke.
Oh, that's fun. Oh, right, because she's fat. Okay.
Right.
Who's Jessica Jones?
Okay, so Jessica Jones,
some super lady.
She was let me see. Here's the backstory on Jessica Jones. She was a lonely Midtown high school student with a crush on fellow student Peter Parker and a fantasy fixation on the Human Torch. She was on a trip to Disney World with her family when her father, distracted by a backstreet quarrel of her and her brother, lost control of their car in a car accident with an army truck transporting unidentified experimental material, possibly radioactive, to which Jessica was exposed in the course of the accident. Her father, mother, and brother were killed, and Jessica sustained injuries that put her in a coma for months. While the Fantastic Four clashed with Galacticus outside her hospital window, so that's who was in that hospital, Jessica awoke from her coma, and she was placed in a home for wayward children and later adopted by a family named Jones, whose name she took. She manifested superhuman powers as the result of experimental material, or the material to which she was exposed. She could fly. She was rescued by Thor. After a crash, she realized that she had also gained superhuman strength. So she's like, she can fly and she's really strong. And
did you just come up with all that on your own?
No, that's from the Marvel Universe Wiki.
Oh, okay, gosh.
So thank you, Marvel Universe Wiki. Marvel.com/universe/Jones, _Jessica.
Thanks, MUW. Good looking out.
Well, and apparently this whole thing ties into her and Daredevil and S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Scarlet Witch, and so this brings this other kind of team together, which I think is what they're going to be working on for the next Netflix angle. So,
not to mention the Guardians of the Galaxy one, which we haven't mentioned at all, which was a fun little.
I thought that was the one that Edgar Wright was directing.
No,
Guardians of the Galaxy. No. Okay, my apologies.
But that was the one that we had the little teaser of right in the middle of the credits. James Gunn is directing the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, I like James Gunn. Okay, cool.
Yeah, that was the one with what's his name? What was his name?
Benicio del Toro. That's right.
Yeah, that was good. Okay,
the crazy thing at the end of the movie?
Yeah, that was the teaser for Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, can we? Okay.
Would you like to know about that?
Talk about
too?
that? Who's the collector?
MUW actually comes in handy on this one too.
It's MUW. That's how we talk about it on the streets. Yeah.
And I think there was, I think it was Wired.com. I think they had a little article on, for those of you that saw Thor this weekend but aren't, completely up to speed on all your Marvel Universe history.
That's me.
Here's what this whole scene was really about. And they even talk about, they tie it even back to the first Thor film because it has to do with this this gauntlet of power or something like that, and which is all, I guess, going to play into the Guardians of the Galaxy and the ether, right, and the Tesseract being these whatever power gems or something like that. Yeah.
So the collector is a really bad guy.
He's apparently trying to collect these 5, power
6
things so that that's right, 5 more. Right.
Yeah.
So he's trying to collect these things so he can take over the universe or the galaxy.
Oh, fair enough. I bet that'll work out great for him.
Yes, right. Sure it will.
This is going to be an interesting one because Guardians of the Galaxy, they're like the Avengers from the 31st century.
Right.
And so this whole like time travel thing, and the heroes are like, one is a raccoon, and they're just, it's going to be a lot of CGI, a lot for the actual characters, main characters. So it's very much a sort of Yoda circa original trilogy kind of a film. So it'll be interesting to see what they end up doing with it. I am absolutely not familiar with the Guardians of the Galaxy. This is a comic I've never read, and so I'm very excited to see what they come up with.
Yeah, it will be interesting. Definitely will be interesting.
It's more comedic in stance.
With a character as a raccoon, it's kind of hard to see it any other way. I'll be interested to see if they try to do that.
And
from what
Vin
I
Diesel
heard,
has a part as a talking tree or something like
Yeah.
that, I guess. Yeah.
They showed a clip of it at Comic-Con, and from what I heard, it definitely had some of that, a lot of levity, kind of just a wacky humor. So I'm curious to see how it all fares.
That makes Edgar Wright make more sense. Oh no, I'm still thinking that Edgar Wright is directing it.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, minutes.
I drank so much.
You just want Edgar
still
Wright.
dealing with that.
I kind of want Edgar Wright to direct everything.
That's right.
Ever since Scott Pilgrim in the World, which was my favorite movie of that year, I just love him. Can we go back to the film for a second?
Yes, let's do that. What do you have to say?
Yes, enough digressions.
How did Loki live? I'm glad that he lived. I assumed he would live because the film went to sleep whenever he wasn't on film, but
and they offed him extremely easily. Like there was no emotional buildup to him being disappeared.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, they killed him and he gave a speech to his brother.
Yeah, well,
I mean, that seemed like
kind of an
a
anemic
thing.
speech.
But also, like, how did he live? Did I miss something? Just because he can turn into another person doesn't mean that when he seemingly dies, he dies. It seemed like a cheat, but I assumed I missed something. Film buddies
because
to the rescue.
I would say the only thing that I can either logically come up with, given, as we talk about the way Loki operates, is appearances can be deceiving with him. So he may have appeared to have died and returned to his whatever stone or frost giant origins with his skin sort of taking on that different hue and all that.
He can change that.
Well, he could. I could just. I mean, if you can make Thor's hand disappear, you could change. I don't know. That's the logic that I had to come up with to justify how he's still alive seemingly when we think he's dead. As again, with him, nothing's what it seems. That's
all you can. That's all you can assume when you walk out. It's just like, well, Loki is the trickster, so he must have somehow found a way to fake his death for Thor. I don't know how he planned it in such a short moment, but he obviously figured it out and was able to pull the wool over Thor's eyes back on the throne, waiting for the perfect moment when his father, or when Odin wasn't sitting in it.
I don't know. Yeah, exactly. That's one of the crossover.
Well, that's the question. Is that felt like a
cheat.
If Loki's sitting there as Odin, has he somewhat locked Odin away somewhere and taken his place and is ruling in his stead, and has Odin, imprisoned someplace? Because
that's the most interesting thing. Yeah, is Odin dead?
That's what I came with, not just
that's
like,
oh gosh,
let's wait for Dad to leave and then I'm going to take his place and hope Thor comes by. No, I take it as more sinister. Loki's finally found a way to get on the throne, because he when he had that, he appeared, he was that guard. That guard comes to deliver the news to Odin, and it's clearly that's not the guard to deliver the news of what happened. That's Loki, because he appeared as a guard earlier in the film. And if you had a keen eye, there was that moment you could see, because there's always that sort of greenish glow when they changed. There was that on the edge of the screen as the camera came across, and then that guard or soldier or whatever we'll call him was there on the desolate dirt planet. So I sort of pieced together, okay, he's taken on that guise. He's now going to there I am.
There you am.
Going to, if he's going to appear to Odin and trick him to deliver this news, there's a lot that goes on off screen that Loki's up to that I don't know if we're ever going to see that or not, but I'm just kind of the fact you can't trust him.
And that was when they cut away from fake soldier, real Loki delivering the news that Loki died. Or I guess he says, no, someone didn't live. And then his father, because it's a big daddy issue thing, obviously, with Loki, saying someone that it was it Loki? And he goes, yes, sir, it was. To cut away from that scene, that was the most interesting part of that scene, was letting Loki hear what his father really feels about him, I'm sorry. And so to cut away, I would think that was the most interesting part to me, was where's Odin?
Right.
Because it must not have gone well.
So
I know Chris Hemsworth has at least one more Thor film and 2 more Avengers films that he's contracted to do. So I mean, at least we know we're going to get the answer.
Oh, I like that. I like that you know that. I kind of wish we didn't know that. Doesn't that kind of hurt? Like, because when everyone's become so like film savvy and like entertainment news and stuff, like, I don't know. Can you really like have another Psycho or something like that?
Well, if you can have a sequel to The Shining, you can certainly have another. Yeah.
Well, the first season of Game of Thrones did it.
Yeah. Right.
I didn't see that come. I hadn't read the book, so I didn't see that coming. Killing the first.
Oh, that's epic. That's epic.
Yeah, it was insane.
So, did you guys? First of all, and this is one of those things I was really frustrated with in the difference between in the first movie to the second movie, that there was, in the first movie they made this huge deal about how the Bifrost Gate was destroyed, and that was going to be really hard to deal with. And in this movie, the Bifrost Gate is totally fixed. Like there was nothing that was hard about that. There was a lot. That made me mad. And so in this movie, I hope that we figure out, that we get to know the secret of Loki and his survival. But I am not confident that we will see that. The one thing that was interesting to me, I did not stay. So I saw the mid-credit scene, right? Yeah. I didn't stay for the end. Did you guys stay for the end?
Of course, you always have to. And you didn't miss. Really,
you didn't. No, you actually just missed a little joke.
What about the frost monster from Jotunheim?
Yeah, he's
what?
The frost monster from Jotunheim.
Oh, Stop putting sounds together.
Talking about dinosaur dog.
No, it said this is Wikipedia says Jane and Thor reunite on Earth while somewhere in London a frost monster from Jotunheim.
That's the
runs around and chases birds. Yeah,
he runs around and chases birds.
He's running. He's frolicking around chasing birds.
Oh,
yeah, that's
it.
All.
Well, see, they say it runs amok.
Nothing sinister. Well,
no,
you say chasing birds. That sounds more like frolicking, not amok.
It's frolicking.
It was frolicking. It was very playful. There was nothing sinister about it. It's not like, oh no, there's something dark afoot in London, and now Thor's got something else to take. It was just, oh yeah, that wacky dog just chasing birds and pigeons.
Yeah,
and
it really diminishes the whole frost monster from Jotunheim. It makes it feel like, a cute little puppy playing in the yard. So it really took a lot out of it for me. It really did take it out.
But then also Nick Fury died. But past that, there was nothing.
Yeah.
There was nothing to hang on to. No, they did usually like the collector scene would have been at the end of the movie.
Yeah, so they just need to shoehorn more credit scenes.
But I think that they followed Joss Whedon's thing of the shawarma scene after the Avengers.
Right.
Of like, it doesn't always have to. Now that we have everyone together, Nick Fury showing up at the end of the movie, being like, "Really, you still don't want to come?" They're just starting to maybe use it as jokes now.
Yeah. All right. So, final verdict on this movie. Let's go around and do
Wait, real quick. I just want to say, I was glad to see that Idris Elba and Rene Russo both had more meat to their characters this go around.
Yes.
I enjoyed both of them, and I loved seeing Rene Russo just kick butt.
She's a butt kicker. That's the truth.
Yeah.
I liked her a lot.
That was so much fun to see.
I'm bummed that she ate it too, though. That's sad.
But it was great seeing the little Viking funeral. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but think, what is the protocol on the Viking funeral after the first guy hits the boat with the arrows? Does everybody else try to is there any point, like, if you were the archer, would you be like, I can hit that too? Like, I would want to hit that thing too.
Well, there were plenty of boats to hit. Jeez.
How'd you like to be one of those guys? Okay, what was your other thing?
That was it.
That was the whole thing. All right.
Those two things. Those were the two people.
Because that was in Game of Thrones, right? Unless I'm confused, there was a scene where the archer in a Game of Thrones fails a couple times to light the thing. I was just wondering if that was a fun thing for the director.
I wonder if that was done in one of his episodes. I need to go back and check that. That's really fun.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to do some flick charting, shall we?
Oh, flick chart.
This is going to be good fun. I can't wait.
This is the point in the show where Tom goes, "What's flick chart again?"
No,
I'm glad you asked, Tom.
Here's my new thing, because I remember what flick chart is. I would actually like to suggest that we have some sort of a song that plays. Like when Pete says, "Okay, I guess it's time for flick chart," and be like, "Flick chart, let's get our flick chart on." Like it should have a theme, don't you think?
Can you record that for us, and then we'll use it?
You don't even need to bother. I'm just going to use what you just did.
That's it.
I'm just going to take it out, and I'm going to double it, and maybe do some auto tuning.
Think about it.
And that's going to be our new.
Let's get our flick chart on. I think that's what it needs. All right, good.
I can't wait. And after that, we're going to go to flickchart.com/thenextreel, and that is where you can find our list of all the films that we've done. And now that we have more than 100 episodes, debuting below 100. Or debuting higher than 100 is premium placement. So this will be a good test for Alan Taylor's Thor: The Dark World.
Let's see. You ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
Thor: The Dark World, or Thank You for Smoking.
Thank you for smoking.
Thank you for smoking.
Thank you for smoking.
All right. Thor: The Dark World, or Miller's Crossing.
Miller's Crossing.
It is a pretty convoluted story, but at least there is more I enjoy the convolutedness, can I say that, of Miller's Crossing. I would have loved Thor: The Dark World to be as convoluted as Miller's Crossing.
On its very best day, it's not as convoluted.
I still don't think that I really understand Miller's Crossing, but Miller's Crossing.
Definitely.
Thor: The Dark World, or Oz the Great and Powerful. It totally is Thor.
Yes, it is Thor.
It's Thor.
You know what? Honestly, no, it's Thor. I just always like to pretend to have like a thing.
So look, I'm Tommy the Contrarian.
Yeah.
All right. Thor: The Dark World, or Bullet?
Bullet, please.
Oh, totally Bullet.
Yes, Bullet.
What do you do if you haven't seen the movie and you're ashamed about it? Do you just go along with everyone else, or do you abstain?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, no, if there's shame involved, you just be real quiet and sad. If you haven't seen the movie, you can admit it and then go see the movie.
Oh, okay.
Get back to us.
So sad I couldn't make the podcast tonight.
Thor: The Dark World or Key Largo?
Oh God, these same movies keep coming up.
I'm gonna have to, Thor. I'm gonna have to go with Thor because it is fun, and it is something I will watch again. I have seen Key Largo. It's been a while, but I did have fun with Thor.
I would go with Thor: The Dark World because you're right. It is a lot of fun to watch.
I will go with Thor because just like I did with the Wolverine bullet train sequence, the Thor congruence, whatever that's called, sequence at the end, confluence, was just so much fun.
I was going to go Key Largo, so I'll be okay with that.
Yeah, right. You're a fancy.
Thor: The Dark World or Major League?
Now or when I was a child?
Now. I actually think I would go Thor over Major League.
Yeah, I would too. Because
I enjoy Major League, but it's dated. It definitely has a dated feel to it.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'll go Thor.
I'll go Major League. Why not?
Right.
Somebody's got to stand up for Major League.
Right, guys, it's Major League.
That's right. All right. Wow. Look at that. We cracked the top 100.
Wow.
At 99.
No.
Okay. All right. That feels good.
That's fantastic. 99.
Be happy that Thor just bumped Bull Durham out of the top.
Oh, finally. Valhalla, thank
right.
you.
You guys all hate Bull Durham. I love Bull Durham.
No. He hates it. I love it.
I don't. I just
so good.
Oh, shut it, please. Oh, you and your boosterism for Kevin 2x4 Costner.
It is okay. I'm gonna stop. Yep.
Hey, this was great, everybody. Thank you, Tommy. Thank you for hanging out with us, and Steve. Thank you for hanging out with us, and Andy. You're just always a real charmer. It's been a good conversation about Thor: The Dark World. Everybody, please check out thenextreel.com.
Couldn't afford the .com.
And check out the blog stylings of our very own blog runner, Steve Sarmento, who's been blogging fantastically over there. And to join the discussion on Facebook.com/thenextreel as well. And don't forget, stay tuned every Thursday, I'm going to say Friday morning, when we do the regular show, and you can catch up on the Instagram Guess the Movie Pony Prize, and Andy will be sure to give you an update next week. And I think that, as they say, is that. Thanks, everybody, and we'll catch you next time on The Next Reel.
Oh, you played the trailer?
Yeah, thanks for listening.
I do listen. That's new.
Not that new.
Huh. When did you start?
Huh.
Oh, I should stop talking. Okay, go ahead.
Long enough. Did you start at the beginning? That's right. You started 100 episodes ago. That'd be okay.
Right. You're Mark Maron, right? All right, go ahead.
I want to punch you in the neck.